Well, welcome everyone. Nice to see you all gathering for our fourth week, Mindfulness 2022. Let's get started. This week we focus on emotions, and I'm going to add somewhat of a new element. I mean, it's part of the overall teaching, but I'm going to really try to call it out more, and that's this idea of non-judgment, but specifically self-judgment. And then also talk about a concept called equanimity. And you'll see that towards the end, we'll actually do a little practice around that as well. So if you haven't already put in your attendance in the chat, go ahead and do that if you haven't, so I can take attendance at the end. Let's start as we often do. Everybody can see my slides okay and hear me okay?
Yep.
Good.
Yes.
So let's start with a brief pause, as we often do in the class, and we're going to do something called 3 breaths for a pause. It's very simple, very easy, and it starts with just simply sitting quietly, as we often do, allowing the body to settle a little bit. And it's 3 full breaths. We'll start first with a very full, deep breath, filling the lungs. I'm going to mute everybody. So take a full deep breath, fill the lungs, just really feel this one breath. Long, slow exhale. Just pay attention to what this breath feels like. Breath is always there. It's always our anchor. And another full deep breath. And this time, focus on your body. And just kind of check in with the body, quick body scan, and notice, how's my body doing? And what does my body need? Maybe asking yourself that question. And then a third full deep breath in. And remember to be kind to yourself. Remember to take care of yourself. Remember to take some time for you. And that's it. You can open your eyes if they've been closed. That's 3 breaths for a pause. And real simple, real easy. And as I've been opening these sessions with these brief practices, I hope you've been trying some of them, because as I've mentioned, the full formal practice of sitting for, anywhere from 8 to 12 minutes daily, if possible, is, the cornerstone of our practice. But the informal, brief practices, these pauses and other kinds of things that I've been asking you to do are really so important. And kind of the more that I read, the more that I explore my own practice, these informal pauses, these brief ways of checking in with ourselves are so important. They really are. And it's really kind of comes down to just checking in with yourself occasionally throughout the day, asking yourself the question, how am I doing? Slowing down, pausing, checking in, kind of doing that internal weather check, and then moving on. But that gives you a chance. And in fact, that's one of the practices, we talked last week about rain and stop. Those practices are great ways to, instead of reacting to what's going on in the moment, gives us that space to pause and be able to stop and then just respond rather than automatically react. So. All right, so let me open it up and ask you how it's going. You can either use the chat. I'd love to know how last week went. We talked last week about applying these practices to our stress. And many of you did the perceived stress scale, and it was pretty high for a lot of us. And that's something that I tell people in Yale New Haven Health System, that our stress levels are higher than the norm. It's not really no surprise. But so if you're willing to share a little bit, how did your practice go last week? You could have tried a number of things. You could have tried the thought meditation. Remember, we did that. Or the rain meditation, or the breaking the worry addiction, are all kind of interrelated. Anybody have any? And if you want to speak up, that's fine too. Feel free to unmute yourself. Anybody have any experiences with those practices that we talked about last week that you'd like to talk a little bit about or put in the chat? All right, good. Thank you, Faye. Naming was helpful. Yes, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that as well. Naming, just mentally labeling what's going on as a way to recognize it, accept it, be aware of it is really a key ingredient to all this. The informal practices included noticing unpleasant events. The week before we noticed pleasant events. Anybody have any thoughts about that? If you tried to pay some attention to, they're probably all around, unpleasant events.
Hi, buddy, it's Jim.
Hey, Jim.
Hey, notice that throughout the week, when you talk about unpleasant events, especially when you hear about things in the news, the link between those, when you hear those, they reinforce some biases that you wish you could get rid of. So I think part of the challenge is to kind of break that link when you run up against unpleasant events, to have it reinforce some negative biases you have, and that's just my comment, my observation for the week.
Thank you, Jim. Yeah, that's really a key one. There are so many different forces out there, in a sense. That makes me think of the storm. The storm was not fun. It was difficult, but it really wasn't all that bad. At least I hope you didn't lose power, or I hope it wasn't bad for you. But, if you listen to the media, they sensationalize it so ridiculously, and it gets everybody into a state of panic and frenzy and anxiety, right? So that's an example to me, and what you're saying is noticing those triggers that reinforce those biases that we have. Those are the automatic conditioned thought patterns and beliefs that we have to begin just simply being aware of, and then noticing, oh, okay, I'm reacting to that, stepping back, maybe taking a deep breath or two, and then, oh, okay, and that gives us that new awareness, that little bit of space to realize, yeah, I'm being triggered by what that weatherman's saying and all the stuff they're talking about, the winds and all that stuff. So we have a lot of good comments in here. Thank you. All right, good. So I broke through faster than usual using my new techniques. Excellent. So that's good to hear. Some good comments. Practice rain. I'm losing my chat here's not cooperating. But you can all read these. And I think you'll see how there are some pretty common reactions that a lot of you are probably can relate to. Someone practiced rain. Good. I hope some of you tried rain. Rain is something that really can be done, I think, in the moment. It can be sort of an informal practice, but also more formal if you wanted to do that. It's also something you can keep coming back to once you begin to kind of uncover some of the beliefs and the patterns. And yeah, your comment, I think, is so important. I found it helpful just to allow life to be just as it is. That in and of itself, I think, is huge. If we could do that, that would take care of a lot of the stress that we're feeling. Yeah, good. There's a comment about it with unpleasant events with families that you work with. It's very difficult not to worry, which brings on added stress. Yeah, I mean, that's part of, I'm not sure what your exact job is, but the balancing of, you're human, you're going to feel, you're going to have that compassion, and to not allow that then to overtake you. And that's part of the key of what we're talking about here. Noticing those things, noticing, stepping back from it a little bit, giving it a little bit of distance. And that's going to take a little practice. So try that. Try doing a little more practice with that and see if you can not be caught up. Even noticing, okay, you're worrying about it, that brings on the added stress. Even just noticing that. All right, I'm worried, labeling that. What does that worry and stress feel like in the body? Just turn inwards and see what you can be aware of. Let's see. Do the same, not react, but reframe the stress. Good. To more of a growing. And that's really, I love that word. It really is a lot about reframing what we're going through. Rather than if we do get automatically triggered, that doesn't give us a chance to do that. But all these techniques help us step back so we have a moment to reframe. So there's a lot more here. There's some great stuff. Stopping, identifying, very good. Started to worry about something I have no control over. I acknowledge that I have no control. Good. And my worrying won't make a difference. Excellent. Love that. And I did my best to let it go. Yeah, that's a nice sequence. Realizing there are some things we have no control over it, but what we do have control over is our internal reactions. So, and then see if you can let go. There are some other meditations, by the way, on our page, which under the reduce anxiety or reduce stress and anxiety and COVID related, because those are kind of like a lot of those have to do with, not holding on to things, but letting things go as best you can. So good, excellent. A lot of good comments here. Taking breaks, creating moments I can look forward to. Good. Yep, that's another good thing. All right, thank you all for putting some. I didn't get to all of them, I apologize, but you can all read through those. Very important observations. I hope that some of you, I hope that all of you actually are using those log forms and also connecting with your buddy. That's really the way that I'm hoping that you'll get a chance to kind of run this stuff by someone else and just get their take on it, and just share it, what your reactions are, because this really is kind of a different way of approaching life. And that's why, I do it in 6-week format, so you can really get a chance to try some of this stuff on a daily basis. But to have somebody to process it with can be very helpful. And that's why I love to get your chat on these things too, because you can see that we're all experiencing similar kinds of things. So today we do focus on emotions, and the mini lesson here, that uncertainty and our emotions create strong waves, a lot of ups and downs and turbulence in our lives. And so the idea here is that, we can't get rid of them. We can't control those waves, but we can learn to surf rather than get tossed about. And then the quote by Tara Brach, our strongest and most habitual emotions are sometimes completely unconscious. And that's really what we're trying to do. We're trying to get below the surface here to see with mindfulness what these patterns are and how they are running our lives. So, we may notice things that are, bring up the waves, the strong waves, the emotions, and today's session is really all about that. So the mindfulness piece is to then begin to step back, and rain is a great example and a great practice to try to, do that. So keep doing the rain too. Now I want to show you this concept of VUCA: volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. This is something that I came across in some research done by Amishi Jha, who is a neuropsychologist, and she wrote a book called Peak Mind. And she studied people who regularly experience all these things: soldiers, firefighters, organizational leaders, athletes, but she's even worked with healthcare. And in fact, we've engaged her to be a speaker in our Smile of Wellness workshop in June. So, be looking for that when we begin to publicize it. But what she says is that all these things really erode our attention. And attention, our ability to stay focused, is one of the key ways that we can combat some of these things, especially, and all of these things, you don't have to be a firefighter or police or first responder to experience these. We're all experiencing these things right now since the beginning of COVID. We're living in this very unpredictable, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous time, right? So if you're feeling overwhelmed and unfocused, if you've struggled with staying on task or been blindsided by emotion, it's no surprise. We all have. We would kind of expect this. And she, and this is her talking, this makes the point. This is exactly what their research regarding the human brain's attention system would predict. These things take our attention offline and make us more susceptible to being blindsided by emotion or being distracted or struggling emotionally. So in other words, you're overwhelmed, it's not your fault, but doesn't mean we can't do anything about it. Now, here's something else that I wanted to show you, is this idea of languishing. It's kind of another force that we're dealing with since COVID. And if you want to read this article when I send the slides out, you just click into the link there. But basically, Adam Grant, an organizational psychologist, calls it this void between depression on the one side and flourishing on the other. So it's sort of like, that's why he calls it this middle child of mental health. For many of us, we're not completely burned out or depressed. We've not at that end of the spectrum, but we're also not the picture of flourishing. We may not be functioning at full capacity. Languishing dulls our motivation. It also disrupts our ability to focus and triples the odds that you'll cut back on work. So it's definitely something that we are experiencing, this feeling of being sort of like in a rut and being a little bit stuck and not really, again, feeling that the flourishing side of life. So a couple of quick tips that he suggests. And the first one is, we've already talked about this, and we'll mention it again, because it is so important, is naming what you're feeling. And in a couple of minutes, I'm going to ask you to name the predominant mood or the predominant feeling that you're in. So that's step number one. Step two, which he calls an antidote, is to try to get into this state of flow. This idea that when we're totally absorbed in a task or a project or a hobby, or could be something at work or something in our personal lives, we're in this flow state. We're totally in the zone. And we kind of lose our sense of time and self and place. We're just there. There's nothing else bothering us. We have complete focus. So try to find ways to connect in those ways. And, flow could be the end state, but even in small ways, finding small ways to begin feeling that sense of absorption in a task. Ways to do that? Well, give yourself some uninterrupted time, which is hard these days because, our time is so precious. And, this idea of where we all are, have a sense of time poverty. And if we could work on building more time into our day, I think most of us would prefer that. So carving out some uninterrupted time rather, is key. And that may be something you'll have to do yourselves. You may have to do some ways to really create some boundaries. And this bullet here, I think, is so important. Getting more done wasn't just good for performance at work. We now know that the most important factor in daily joy and motivation is a sense of progress. So just realizing that we are checking things off the to-do list. And I think the key to all that is getting things done, putting our head down, feeling good about that, but also making sure that you're taking care of yourself and you have the balance. All right. Also focusing on a small goal. So try starting with small wins, little things that you can do. And when you think about it, that's essentially what I'm asking you to do in these classes and in your practice. Carving out some uninterrupted time to do some meditations and some mindful practices, and focusing on small ways to integrate that into your daily life. So what you're doing, I applaud you. If you're able to do that, that's what's going to help you with this sense of languishing. So what are you feeling? Let's talk about that a little bit. And I'd love for you to put in the chat, just maybe pick one of these. Maybe it's languishing, or maybe it's one of these off here, one or two of these. Just taking a look at these emojis. How have you been feeling? And really specifically, how are you feeling today? How are you feeling now? Maybe putting a word or two in the chat, and we'll kind of take a quick poll and see how everybody's doing. Because usually what we'll notice is that we begin paying attention, our feelings have been up and down. They've been all over the place. There's also here, put up another slide that you can sort of see some other things related to the COVID. So great, lots of good stuff here. You can all see these varieties of things coming through here. Tired, stressed, scattered, frustrated, quiet, overwhelmed, proud, dissatisfied, happy, good. See, there's some positive in here too. Frustrated again, unsettled, happy, quiet, annoyed, state of limbo. Yeah, that state of limbo. Ease, very good. And so hopefully some of these practices will help you begin to get in touch with some of those things. Some more better after taking uninterrupted time. That's a good observation. Stressed, frustrated, tired, frustrated, a lot of similarities there, right? Hope, good. Quiet, tired, content, anxious. So you can see we're all feeling a lot of similar kinds of things. And so today's lesson is really so important, because what we're trying to do with all this is first, acknowledge your feelings. In a sense, what we're doing with mindfulness of emotions is we're increasing our emotional intelligence, because our tendency is to want to avoid anxiety or sadness or depression or anger, right? Avoid a lot of those things that you mentioned. That's just common human nature, that we try to stuff it. We try to numb ourselves to some of these emotions. But the more we are unwilling to accept difficult emotions, the more they increase. And research has actually borne that out, that the more we tend to stuff our emotions, not deal with them, not face them, they come out in other ways. And sometimes, in some ways, when we push them under the surface, I think of root vegetables. They grow more, and they eventually will come out. So, first step is naming them as best we can. And we talked about rain. That's a good way to begin doing that. And what we're trying to get here is really, when we think about emotional intelligence, this sense of emotional regulation. And part of that is labeling, understanding what our emotions are. In the RAIN exercise, for example, we talked about investigating with kindness, noticing what's going on inside with some of these emotional tangles. And think about it, folks, this is really where some of the insight comes in. But here's another thing that kind of gets in the way, and it's this self-judgment. So, if you kind of have a tendency to get down on yourself, please know you're not alone. We all do this. We all have this inner critic that easily pops up. And even if you look at this second bullet here, and this is where we notice in our practice, you might have found even during this mindfulness training that there's been a tendency to put yourself down in some way. Maybe you've been critical about your level of effort, or maybe you felt you weren't doing it correctly. Maybe you felt you were falling short in some way. So remember in the beginning, I said, this is not about getting an A in meditating. This is about learning a practice that we can integrate into our lives that can really be helpful. And so when we notice this sense of self-judgment, that's exactly what we want to do. We want to simply begin to notice it. And it's hard because our brains are inclined towards focusing on and remembering what seems bad or wrong. So think about that. Our brains are actually hardwired that way. It's called the negativity bias. That's kind of how we've evolved. It's helped us, get through all sorts of tough times. So we do have to overcome that in some ways. And the first step, again, is awareness of that. And so the next, I know there's a lot of words here, you can read those, but the antidote is really self-compassion. Now, I just want to introduce this concept in I think it's the 6th class. We're really going to focus a bit more on self-compassion and self-acceptance. But this sense of that that we can be kind to ourselves. If you recall, I've talked about this a number of times. This is an important way to give ourselves a break, to notice when that inner critic rises, we can turn that inner critic into an inner coach. So when we feel self-compassion, we're no longer living in the identity of the judge or of this deficient self. This is from Tara Brach, by the way. I've got the source down there. And we in these moments when we can feel self-compassion, we can see the truth about ourselves. We can see that even our imperfections are there, but without that added toxic layer of self-version. So in other words, what we tend to do is we tend to, that self-critique of whatever is going on, that makes it worse. That adds fuel to the fire in a sense. Now, it takes practice. And if we're going to loosen that sort of entrenched habit, these are another one of our conditioned patterns, we can do that with some self-compassion. So what I'd like to do in the first meditation, just checking on the time here. What we're going to do with this first meditation is you'll see that there's, in the beginning, there will be some talk about the noticing judgments when they arise, okay? And then we're also going to focus on some of the emotions that are present. So some of the groundwork we just did in recognizing your emotional state right now, or just thinking about some things that have been going on in your life that have some emotionality to them, we'll be able to kind of think about those in the meditation. And thinking is actually part of it. So that's why I do the lesson first on thoughts. Last week, when we begin to identify our thoughts, we realized that we have all these extra thoughts, right? We have repetitive thoughts, we have sticky thoughts, we have negative thought patterns. We have patterns that come up automatically out of those conditioned responses. So this idea of recognizing our thinking patterns and being able to step back from them is very important too. And this carries over into our emotions. So let's begin and let's do this practice. All right, so we'll begin by finding a comfortable posture, allowing your body to settle and allow your mind to be at ease. And bring a relaxed, focused attention to the primary anchor of your breath or of body sensations, either one. And take a moment to collect your attention and deepen your presence, being aware of our breath, being aware of our body anchored here. And when you find your attention has been distracted, called away by thoughts, simply note that to yourself, thinking, and gently return. If the thinking is charged or persistent, you might refine your notation, worried, obsessing, stressed, upset. Again, just labeling it. And if the thinking is in the form of self-judgment, name that too with a kind attention. Judging. And then pause. Take some moments to simply notice and bring a gentle, full presence to the feelings that arise with self-judgment. And you can return gently to the next in-breath or out-breath, resting with your anchor. And if other strong feelings appear, bring a presence to them and notice what you're experiencing. Anger, anxiety, fear. And also be aware if there's a layer of self-judgment that comes with those feelings. Sometimes we judge ourselves for the feelings that we're having. And if so, include the thoughts of self-judgment and feelings that are under them in a mindful awareness. In this way, you're being mindful of feelings and also how you're relating to the feelings. Continue in this way, noticing what's arising, being alert to the presence of self-judgment. Once you've offered your attention to the thoughts and feelings of self-judgment, then gently return again to your breath or general body sensations. You might bring a half smile of kindness to your mouth and your face and let it fill your body, a kind, receptive presence. Relaxed and focused attention with your anchor. Let your mind be calm and your body relaxed. Calm and ease. And turning your careful attention to notice whatever feelings are present right now. Let your mindfulness have an attitude of gentleness, and care, and interest. exploring this amazing river of human feelings as a witness. And just acknowledge several feelings may be present at once, sometimes very few feelings. No matter, they may be quiet and subtle. Acknowledge each feeling as if with a bow. No need to judge, just let them be. They're part of the human river of feelings. Noticing whatever feelings are present right in this moment. Also notice how the feelings are experienced as body sensations. So bring your attention into the body. Each can be felt as patterns of energy and sensations in different parts of the body. See if you can sense where feelings live in the body and how sensations feel. Opening to whatever you're aware of with a kind, receptive attention. Moment to moment noticing the feelings that live through you. And you might ask, what is happening inside me right now? And can I be with this? As feelings move and change, so simply notice them and let them be. The point is not to stop the river of feelings, but to notice them with awareness. Now again, return to feel the breath, calming and steadying your attention. And as you arrive at your home base, continue feeling it in the foreground, the breath or anchor in the body. And if a strong feeling arises, then let the breath recede, and again, acknowledging, bowing to whatever feeling is prominent. And then when it is no longer calling your attention, arrive back in your home base. And in this way, we learn to be centered and balanced and present for the breath and body and our emotions, responding as needed wisely and aware of them all. So as we begin to close and rise out of this meditation, just feeling the breath, feeling the body, and gradually, when you're ready, slowly opening the eyes to finish. Okay, so that is a meditation on emotions. I started with some focus on self-judging there. And I don't know if you remember, but there was a quote that I think it was from Tara Brach as well last time, that one of the key predictors of doing well in a mindfulness practice is the sense of being kind to ourselves. And that's why the self-judgment is so important to be aware of. If you find yourself saying, and I hear this from a fair amount of people, that it's difficult, or they feel like they're thinking too much, or there's so much going on in their minds and they can't, focus in presence, that's just part of the awareness. So, and that's a lot of times why people get discouraged. So use that, try to just simply recognize that and notice that, like we did in this practice, that being aware of when you're judging yourself, giving yourself some compassion and kindness, that will go a long ways. So what did you think of that? That was definitely a little bit different. If you wanted to, feel free to put a word or two in the chat as to how that was for you. But as you noticed in the last class, we talked about stress and thoughts, and this class, of course, they're closely linked with our emotional state. So I think, to me, this is one of the big areas where the rubber meets the road. So where we can get some insight, where we can realize that there are these like unconscious patterns going on that we didn't even realize, and that's where the insight is. So, all right, couple of chats here. I feel peaceful and calm, observing the thoughts and feelings. Good. Okay. Now let me know. Any others? Relief from some of the stress. All right. Good. I like the emotional journey. Yeah, I did. It was an emotional journey. Good. All right. Excellent, everybody. Thank you. So at this point, what I'd like to do is turn to this concept called equanimity, and we'll kind of finish this class with this, and we'll do another brief practice. So equanimity is kind of an interesting word, but here's a definition for you. Simply mental calmness or composure or evenness of temper, especially in difficult times. And there are some synonyms, I can't say it, synonyms for it. So equanimity is something that in mindfulness practice, we feel that can come out of practice. It may not be something, especially, we talked about the VUCA and languishing and some of the emotional ups and downs, which are part of our life these days, with COVID. I don't know about you, but I keep having things surface in things that we are doing in our, family and personal lives, and things that are going on that are just more difficult than ever. And I think because of, we're still going through these times, these uncertain times. And so the practice is so important. And I hope you're beginning to see some of the benefits of daily practice. And if not daily, almost every day. But the idea, again, is for you to begin to establish this routine of doing some sort of mindfulness practice every day. And if possible, a combination between the formal and informal. And as we begin to also look at our thought patterns and the emotional ups and downs that we go through, to be able to name them, to be able to tame them in a sense, to be able to step back from them and not be caught up by them. So this is a little more difficult stuff, I think. But again, with practice, you can begin to get this sense of equanimity or mental calmness. So we'll do this practice, and it's called the eye of the hurricane. You'll see a lot of kind of metaphors in a lot of mindfulness meditations, and this is another one. So kind of apropos of the blizzard kind of winds that we had recently. So we'll do this another practice. All right, so let's sit comfortably again. We'll try to do this in about 5 minutes. So sitting comfortably, allowing the body to relax. Let your shoulders relax, gently closing your eyes. Taking a couple of deep breaths if that helps. Deep, long, slow breaths. Feel the breath. Feel the relaxation that the out breath can bring. Becoming aware of your body sitting, noticing the contact between your body and the seat beneath you. Noticing your feet on the floor. Now let's consider a metaphor. Within the strong, turbulent winds of a hurricane, the eye, the center of the hurricane, is quiet. There's no wind or movement there. For a moment, picture this idea in your mind. Can you visualize the strong, turbulent winds of a hurricane and the inner core that's peaceful and quiet? Let's see if you can become like the center of the hurricane. Your current circumstances, your thoughts, your feelings, and the sensations throughout your body can be compared to the winds of a hurricane. Is it possible for you to let go of all these things for a moment so that you're no longer taking part in them? Like the center of a hurricane is not taking part in the turbulent surrounding winds. To do this, start by focusing on your breath and simply breathe in and breathe out. Focus inward. Just like the eye is deep within the hurricane, your eye is deep within you. And use your breath to connect to this part of you. Simply breathe in and breathe out. And if anything stressful happens in this moment, such as a negative thought or an unpleasant feeling or annoying sounds or difficult life memories or events, try to look at them as if they are the turbulent wind of the hurricane, whirling around, constantly changing, unpredictable in nature. And notice that you are not them. You are the silent center of the hurricane, the part that is peaceful despite what's happening around you. You are not reacting, you are simply observing. Like the wind of the hurricane, these experiences are constantly moving and changing. You, on the other hand, are stable. You are not moving or being carried away by them. As you're breathing, notice how you move more and more towards the center of the hurricane, towards the eye. You're in a safe, peaceful place. Breathing in and breathing out. And as you sit here connected to your eye, notice whatever arises. Notice the wind of the hurricane, but do not participate. Stay in the eye. Notice thoughts. Notice feelings. Notice sensations. Continue to watch the ever-changing nature of the world inside and outside. Watch from a distance with curiosity and without judgment, without reacting to what you see. No matter how intense or bad the hurricane gets, the eye is always centered, calm, and at ease. Even the most turbulent hurricane cannot harm or hurt the eye. The eye is safe. Whenever you feel the need to restore your inner peace, use your breath to connect to this silent part of yourself. Just breathe in and breathe out. And it may help to visualize the hurricane and yourself in the center. Now, when you feel ready, you can let that image dissolve and slowly open your eyes. And that is the Eye of the Hurricane meditation. to bring you some calm and ease. Hope you found that nice and helpful. Let me know what you think. If you feel like putting a chat or two in, love to hear your reactions to that. All right, so we're getting near the end here. And, you know, in the beginning, I talked about the sense of learning to surf, you know. So again, life is constantly going to throw waves at us. And sometimes the waves are manageable, sometimes they're not. But we can learn to surf these waves. We can learn to kind of stay on top of them. We can learn to be in control of ourselves on the surfboard. And even though if you don't feel like you want to surf, even just noticing this cute little dog here, even a dog can do it. So just for this week, our daily practices. So you have, for a formal practice, the emotion meditation. Now there's a similar one on the website. It's actually similar but different, but you can try that one. But there's also a couple of other ones there. The Eye of the Hurricane is there if you want to redo that one. There's a couple of ones under the reducing stress and anxiety and COVID related. So maybe you want to try something different. There's also a link to the equanimity, to an equanimity practice. And I'll show you that in a minute. Now for the informal practice, try the 3 breaths for a pause, and I'll show you that next, or the stop, and continue to just notice how you're experiencing pleasant and unpleasant events. And don't forget the 3-minute breathing space. I think that's a very helpful practice as well. All right, so there's the 3 breaths for a pause. You'll get that when I send the slides out, and here are the links. So this goes, the first one goes to our meditation page. You can try one of the new ones. The Cultivate Equanimity goes to YouTube, so you may have to be off a hospital device for that. And then there's the 3-minute breathing space again, and the 3-minute 3 breaths for a pause. And then I'll leave you with this last quote. Research shows that mindfulness training increases our access to balance, resilience, and accurate perceptions, even in the midst of strong emotions. That's what I'm talking about with the equanimity. Neuropsychology calls this expanding our window of tolerance. All right, so thanks again, everybody. I'm going to let you go. There's a couple more slides here, which just other links that bring you back to those pages, and the phone meditations to remind you about, as well as employee and family resources. So hope you're finding this helpful. Hope you're connecting with your buddy and doing some of the practices, and want to thank you all very much. So we got 2 more classes, but actually what I'll tell you also is that after the 6th class, I do a 7th refresher or booster session about a month later. So we'll do that as well. So I see all your thank yous coming through. Thank you all very much for joining me today, and wishing you peace and ease and calm in the eye of the hurricane. All righty. Take care, everybody.
Thank you, Bob.